we say the word racism on our platform, the floodgates of the keyboard warriors storm on our page. Given the global context, backlash on DEI, and even more recently, the political tensions in the context of Ireland where we're based, the debates on who is and who isn't racist, and conversations surrounding racism as a concept is quite a touchy matter. But today is the 21st of March, International Day of the Elimination of Racism and Racial Discrimination. And as I am fascinated about human behavior, we're gonna talk about it. Hi, my name is Mamobo Ogoro, founder of GERM and social psychologist. And if you wanna hear and learn about the psychology of racism, make sure you subscribe to our channel, like this video, and even give us a comment. So, before we break down the psychology of racism, let's get some quick definitions out of the way first. Firstly, racism encompasses the beliefs, thoughts, and actions based on the notion that one's race, aka a socially constructed concept that categorizes people based on distinct physical features, let's say. For example, skin color, facial features, hair texture, etc. This belief system inherently categorizes some people as superior than others. It involves prejudice and discrimination directed at individuals or groups based on their race and/or ethnicity. Racism can manifest in various forms, including individual acts of prejudice, institutional bias, and systemic oppression. It's often rooted in power dynamics and historical inequalities, perpetuating social hierarchies and disadvantaging marginalized groups and communities. On the other hand, discrimination is the unequal treatment of individuals or groups based on their characteristics. In this case, we're going to be talking about race, but it can be other things such as socioeconomic background, different abilities, gender, sexualities, you know the gist. Discrimination can occur at an individual level through actions such as harassment, exclusion, or denial of opportunities, as well as systemic through policies and practices that perpetuate inequality. Discrimination can have profound effects on individuals' access to resources, opportunities, and even their well-being. This contributes to social disparities and perpetuates cycles of marginalization and oppression as well. So, to cut it short, racism is the belief system and discrimination is the action and the treatment of inequalities. The psychological study of racism has had quite the journey in its understanding. And in fact, today in Ireland, it plays a huge role in terms of how we understand systems of inclusion and exclusion with certain communities. As society's understanding of race and racism shifts over time, so does the discourse when it comes to psychology, sociology, and all the studies as they evolve. Historically, psychologists focused on the individual psychology of understanding racism, how beliefs and behaviors of individuals perpetuate racism. And even looking at the earlier theories, in the early days, it was influenced by Charles Darwin's work and his theory of evolution. It justified individual racial categorizations and therefore racial discrimination based on people's individual characteristics. Research then moved into justifying brain differences between different racial groups, where intelligence tests were used to prove that different races were superior than others. All of this, by the way, was BS, and we have since debunked all of these notions. Then, in 1954, in The Nature of Prejudice by American social psychologist Gordon Allport, he described that people use categories to differentiate different groups, aka stereotyping. And given the tendency to see your group as superior than others, this is known as in-group bias, watch our video on social identity, racism can be an outcome of this process. Later in the 20th and 21st century, modern perspectives and more intersectional research has built up an understanding of racism, recognizing it as a multifaceted issue that's deeply rooted in power structures and social structures and the social world around us. But this approach has its limits. And today we're growing into more understanding, more advocacy around racism, and understanding that cultural psychological perspectives takes place in this as well. Here, we're seeing that racism can be embedded in culture, where individuals and institutions shape and are shaped by cultural norms and surroundings. Racism from a cultural perspective. What exactly does that mean? Well, in contrast to individualist perspectives, the cultural psychological approach says that racism is rooted in behavior, societal structures, and culture, where they all play a part in shaping each other. This perspective recognizes the connections between cultural norms, psychological processes, and societal structures in perpetuating racial bias and discrimination. All in all, this understanding of racism reflects the interplay between one's psyche and the wider structure and culture around us. We're all a part of different cultural contexts that promote specific ways of perceiving and interacting with the world, which include experiences and attitudes that may or may not be linked with racial groups. These cultural contexts not only shape individuals' understandings, behaviors, and actions when it comes to race, but they can affect the wider structures such as the workplace, school, and even government. On the other hand, while individual activity can contribute to the reproduction and the creation of racial structures, those structures streamline it for the rest of us to enjoy. Individual behaviors, which lead to group-based behaviors, which leads to systems and structures. It's like a never-ending cycle at this stage. They all play a part in cultural realities in any given society. It's a loop that feeds in itself a lot of times. So the cultural psychological frameworks offers three kind of key insights when it comes to the psychology of racism. First, it reveals how racist actions are dynamically reproduced within the structures of everyday life, perpetuating systemic inequalities and harsher realities for those in marginalized communities. Secondly, it highlights how individuals are influenced by and contribute to cultural contexts and worlds around us that may promote racialized ways of thinking and behaving in certain ways as well. And thirdly, it emphasizes the role that individuals and groups play in shaping and producing and maintaining racialized contextual group-based environments. Their actions play a huge part in how the group shapes their norms and how this wider society is formed. Well, we can't blame it all on individuals, but it's in the web of what we call our culture.